Welcome back to State of the Union. European leaders are warning of a, quote, dangerous downward spiral in U.S. relations over President Trump's determination to add Greenland to the United States. Joining us now is the former Vice President of the United States, Republican Mike Pence of Indiana. I see him wearing his Hoosier tie. I assume that that's a nod to Monday night's game. Mr. Vice President, we are seeing a lot
You better believe it.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of Republican pushback to the president's focus on Greenland and his threats yesterday to U.S. allies in terms of the tariffs. Republican Congressman Don Bacon told me yesterday in the wake of the president's new tariff threats, quote, "I and most Americans disagree with the president's heavy-handedness. He is threatening NATO members, which is shameful," unquote. Are you concerned that these actions are jeopardizing the NATO alliance?
Well, I think it's a question right now, Jake, not of what the president's trying to accomplish, but how. And I have concerns about using what I think is a questionable constitutional authority, imposing unilateral tariffs on NATO allies to achieve this objective, as much as I've had concerns about the threat of a military invasion, which apparently is no longer being talked about. But the what here, I think, is absolutely in the interest of the United States of America. I mean, literally, I think it was Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State who negotiated the purchase of Alaska, who first suggested that the United States also purchase Greenland. I traveled to the region in 2019, visited Iceland to literally make the case of our national security interest as China and Russia continue to intrude farther and farther into the Arctic. So what the president's trying to do here, I think, is absolutely in the interest of the United States of America. I would just rather see the president use his persuasive powers and U.S. investment in Greenland to lay a foundation for ultimately achieving that goal.
As you know, we have a treaty with Denmark that allows the United States to build as many military installations on Greenland as the United States wants. There's one right there now, and there have been up to 17 in the past. French President Emmanuel Macron, in terms of how President Trump is attempting this, he posted on X yesterday in response to the president's threats of tariffs, quote, "No intimidation or threat will influence us, neither in Ukraine nor in Greenland nor anywhere else in the world, when we are confronted with such situations," unquote. And that's Macron implicitly putting Trump and Putin on the same level. Are you worried at all that how President Trump is making this play for Greenland is doing the U.S. more harm than good?
Yeah. Well, look, Denmark is a very strong ally of the United States of America. You know, I was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11. Our NATO allies, for the first time ever, used Article 5. They sent their own into harm's way to defend our country, which is what the NATO treaty requires. And no country lost more soldiers on a per capita basis than Denmark. But I do think that the current posture, which I hope will change and abate, does threaten to fracture that strong relationship, not just with Denmark, but with all of our NATO allies. But this is not new. It's important that people understand. It was 2019, I think the president first mentioned buying Denmark, and the Danish prime minister, or I think referred to that as an absurd idea, and the president canceled a trip to Denmark. I ended up traveling to Europe a month later, and then to Iceland to make the case. So I really want to support the president's objective here. I want to encourage people around the country to recognize that we have an absolute national security interest in controlling and I think ultimately owning Greenland. But how we do that, I honestly believe, look, as you said, we've had a treaty with Denmark since 1951. We have a military base there now. There was a point in time where we had 10,000 troops in Greenland. Now I think it's about 200. I think one of the things that the administration could do is simply deploy forces into the region, because the threat that we are faced with continued Arctic incursions by China and Russia is real. The Golden Dome, which I think is a spectacular and visionary idea by the president will require more real estate, including Greenland, to fully implement it. So we have a real interest here, but I'd rather see us making investments, and I think that would lay the predicate for the people of the territory and ultimately Denmark to finding a pathway forward to the United States being able to take Greenland off their hands.
A minute ago, you referred to buying Denmark, and I know you meant buying Greenland. I just want to make sure for the record.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
On Tuesday, let's turn to Iran for a second. On Tuesday, the president posted a message to Iranian patriots in the street promising, quote, help is on its way. Yesterday, the president said it's time for new leadership in Iran after the supreme leader in Iran called the president a criminal. What do you think American help for the citizens of Iran should look like, and should the goal here be regime change?
Well, look, Iran is the leading state sponsor of terror in the world. This regime that's been in place under the mullahs for the last 50 years has not only oppressed and tyrannized their people, but they've also exported terror across the region, claimed American lives in the region and around the world. And it is absolutely in the interest of the United States of America to see a change in Iran. And I am grateful that, different than President Obama in his first year in office, now we have a president who is willing to speak out and express support for the people of Iran as they take to the streets. Back in 2009, I actually authored a resolution in the Congress while President Obama and the Obama administration remained silent during the Green Revolution. We had to pass a resolution in Congress by almost a unanimous vote to ultimately see our president speak out on behalf of those people, but the revolution was crushed. I think the first thing is to express support, to make it clear to the people of Iran that we oppose their government, we don't oppose them, we want to see them have their freedom restored. But I also believe that the credible threat of the use of force, the president's willingness to strike the Iranian nuclear facilities earlier this year was an extraordinary step forward. And I think making it clear that if the mullahs continue this reign of terror against their people, that all options are on the table, I think is a way to save lives, but ultimately set the table for a change in Iran, which would not only change the Middle East, Jake, it would change the world. Let's
turn back to our own hemisphere in Venezuela. The Trump administration right now seems satisfied with what is basically still the Maduro regime minus Maduro and his wife remaining in power. His vice president is the acting president, and the president has repeatedly praised Delcy Rodriguez. There are no plans for elections as of right now. You were the point person on this issue when you were the vice president. Are you worried at all that the president is abandoning the Trump-Pence administration's commitment to a democratic future in Venezuela?
Well, people need to understand that before Chavez and then Maduro brought their tyranny and socialism, that Venezuela was the second most prosperous nation in our hemisphere. They literally broke that country. They created the kind of deprivation that saw 8 to 10 million people literally flee the country in all points on the map. Our administration took decisive efforts to recognize a new president. Juan Guaido was elected. We had 60 countries back us in that, but ultimately Maduro survived. So I'm grateful that President Trump unleashed our elite armed forces, Delta forces, to take Maduro down, to bring him to the United States to face justice. And I think that was a historic and an important step forward towards restoring freedom in that country. But what comes after is just as important, Jake. And I want to say, Delcy Rodriguez is not the right leader for Venezuela going forward. I understand the need for an interim period of time. There'll be a stabilization fund, as the Secretary of State has said. But I think it should be the objective of the United States to move forward as quickly as possible to restore basic liberties, to restore free market principles, do that through free and fair elections. And I have no doubt in my mind, whether it's Maria Machado or someone else, that the people of Venezuela will choose freedom. I'll say one last thing on this, and that is that there are many voices around the president now that are reflecting this kind of new isolationism for the United States. I think it partly accounts for the back and forth on the rhetoric about and support for Ukraine. The president pushed those voices aside when he used our armed forces to strike Iran, but he also pushed those voices aside when he took down Nicolas Maduro, and I'm grateful for that. America's the leader of the free world. We continue to need to act like it, especially when it comes to our hemisphere.
Vice President Mike Pence, good to see you, sir. Thank you so much. Really appreciate hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you, Jake.
Should Democrats resurrect an old slogan for a new fight with the White House? Arizona Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego weighs in next.